My name is Meredith, my fiancé, Gideon, and I decided to rent an old penthouse apartment in Chicago right after our previous lease expired. The apartment was massive, but the rent was ridiculously cheap. The reason was its disturbing history, as both of the previous owners had died inside just a few months prior. I have always been extremely sensitive to spaces with bad energy, and I easily fall into a state of anxiety. Gideon, on the other hand, was completely rational, always brushing off anything paranormal and prioritizing the affordability of the apartment. To renovate the space and reduce the gloominess, we hired people to repaint all the walls and put in fresh carpets. Gideon even installed a modern smart security system at every entrance. This system would emit an automated voice announcement whenever a door opened, which helped me regain some sense of peace. However, the real test came when Gideon had to leave the city for a business trip over the weekend. He boarded his flight on Friday morning, leaving me completely alone to face the silence of this massive apartment. The history of this apartment always weighed heavily on my mind. The previous male owner was found dead from a sudden stroke inside the storage room at the end of the hallway. That room was located in the deepest corner of the house and had been locked tight ever since we moved in. His wife also passed away just a few weeks later due to a tragic accident. In her panic, she tripped and fell right next to the large grandfather clock in the living room. The fall caused a severe head injury, and she never woke up again. That antique oak grandfather clock was the only thing from the previous owners that we kept as a decoration. It was too heavy and bulky to be moved out of this penthouse apartment. Its muffled ticking sound always echoed steadily through the silent space. Day or night, even though we tried to repaint and remodel the entire interior, the coldness never truly went away. The hallway area leading to the storage room always gave off a strangely freezing draft. Every time I walked past it, I felt as if someone was standing behind the thick wooden door, staring intently at me. The tightly locked storage door, combined with the soulless ticking of the clock, became my constant obsession. They reminded me that death had once been present very close by, right inside this space. Gideon boarded his flight on Friday morning, completely cutting off my only emotional support in this apartment. His departure forced me to face all of my brewing fears on my own. My only comfort at this time was Roscoe, our cattle dog. Roscoe was normally a very calm, intelligent animal that rarely barked without reason, but that illusion of peace began to shatter the moment darkness fell. Roscoe refused to lie still at the foot of the bed like he always did. He slowly walked out of the bedroom and headed toward the end of the dark hallway. He stood there completely frozen, staring straight at the tightly locked storage room door. The fur on his shoulders stood on end, and lo, deep growls began to rumble from deep within his throat. Roscoe's extreme tension made it impossible for me to keep lying to myself. I knew for certain that something was wrong, and that it was truly present out there in the dark. Right when my fear was peaking, the smart security system on the wall suddenly began to glitch. The control panel kept emitting sharp, piercing beeps to report a network disconnection error. That soulless electronic sound ringing out in the middle of the night only amplified my isolation. Friday night dragged on in extreme tension as the clock struck exactly 1 in the morning. The antique landline phone from the previous owner's time suddenly rang in a long, frantic sequence. Its sound made me jump because I remembered very clearly that I had personally unplugged its cable before. I approached it in terror and tremblingly picked up the receiver. There was absolutely no human voice on the other end, only a prolonged, wheezing breath. Mingled with that breathing was the steady, dry ticking of a grandfather clock. Terrifyingly, the ticking over the phone perfectly matched the real-time rhythm of the clock running out in my living room. In horror, I slammed the phone down and rushed straight to the bedroom to hide until the next morning. The abnormalities continued to escalate on Saturday night. While I was sitting on the sofa, the heavy display cabinet in the living room suddenly moved on its own into the middle of the room. It moved quite a distance, yet the movement itself made absolutely no dragging sound whatsoever. I immediately called Gideon in a panic to tell him everything that had happened. He sounded skeptical but still tried to reassure me with ordinary physical explanations. But when exactly 3 in the morning hit, all logical explanations became meaningless. The security camera app continuously sent a barrage of motion alerts to my phone. When I turned on the screen to look, I was horrified to see blurry shadows and strange flashes of light appearing in the dark hallway leading to the storage room. The clock read exactly 3:39 in the morning when the landline phone rang once again. Its small electronic screen flashed the notification of an intercom call originating from the extension phone inside the locked storage room. My entire body began to shake in utter terror. In a panic, I rushed into the bedroom and bolted the door shut. Right after that, the smart security system emitted its automated voice, announcing that the storage room door was open. My cell phone suddenly lost all signal, and its screen went completely black. At that exact moment, the bedroom doorknob began to rattle and twist violently from the outside. "Go away! Please go away!" I held Roscoe tightly and cried out in sheer desperation. I rushed over to the window and screamed loudly through the opening to call for help from the neighbors. The police arrived very quickly after that and searched the entire apartment. The mysterious intruder had vanished without a trace, but they found the storage room door broken open from the inside. All the main door locks and windows facing outward were intact, with absolutely no signs of forced entry from the outside. The police could not reach a definitive conclusion and could only offer vague physical explanations. We moved out of there immediately, right after that horrific weekend. The incident never happened again, but it left a lasting obsession about an unidentifiable force that always lingers in my mind. I had a habit of decluttering my house by posting old household items for free online. The constant annoyance of flakes ghosting me after arranging a pickup became a regular thing. Some people would silently show up on my porch at the strangest hours to grab the items without saying a word. I got completely used to seeing strange cars idling in front of my driveway in the middle of the night. The sound of rumbling engines outside, while strangers picked through my unwanted junk, didn't even bother me anymore. This dangerous complacency made me assume that every strange noise in my yard at night was completely harmless. But some minor incidents leave a lingering trauma that stays with you for the rest of your life. On a heavily foggy night in late autumn, a predator disguised as a harmless stranger came along. He turned my old piece of furniture into a deadly trap. I lived alone in an old wooden house in a secluded rural area. Thick rows of pine trees surrounded the property, and the nearest neighbor was a wide yard away. As a freelance programmer working from home, I struggled with severe social anxiety. I absolutely hated having to interact face-to-face with strangers. That was why I always preferred leaving items out on the porch for contactless pickup. I always instructed them beforehand to just take it and absolutely never knock on my door. Because of that, the boundary between my private space and the outside world became incredibly thin. My house also happened to have a fatal vulnerability that night. The back door leading to the yard had a broken latch since that afternoon because I accidentally jammed it. Out of laziness and assuming the area was safe, I just left it cracked open and decided to fix it tomorrow. That afternoon, I struggled to drag an old oak wardrobe outside. It was incredibly heavy and bulky, taking a massive amount of effort just to position it in the middle of the front porch. I turned on the dim yellow porch light above so it would be easy to spot. Around 9 o'clock that night, my phone buzzed with a new message on the app. An account named David messaged me, saying he would drive his truck over to pick up the wardrobe at exactly 11 p.m. because he was working a late shift. I messaged back agreeing and told him to just load it onto his truck himself. I emphasized in the text, "Just grab it whenever you get here. I'm busy working and don't want to be disturbed." Close to midnight, the loud, aggressive roar of an old engine shattered the quiet suburban night. A harsh screech of brakes echoed right in front of my yard. I peeked through the blinds of my living room window to check. A dark, rusted pickup truck was parked crookedly right on my lawn. Its headlights blared at full brightness, blindingly illuminating the porch where the wardrobe stood. The fog outside was so thick it completely obscured the license plate. All I could make out was the silhouette of a tall, lanky man stepping down from the cab. Instead of loading the wardrobe onto the truck like a normal person, he just stood there as still as a statue. He stared intently at the wooden wardrobe for about 2 minutes without moving a muscle. Then, he slowly walked back to the bed of the truck. He leaned over and pulled a long, wood-splitting axe out from the back. The blade caught the headlights, gleaming razor-sharp as it pointed right toward my house. Seeing that made my heart instantly skip a beat in pure panic. A loud, violent crack shattered the quiet night. The man began swinging the axe, hacking into the wooden wardrobe right on my front porch. The sound of splintering wood mixed with the heavy tearing of metal echoed through the empty night. That violent noise paired with his heavy panting and a faint, sick chuckle. I tried to cling to any bit of logic left to calm myself down. I told myself that maybe this guy just wanted to chop the wardrobe down to fit it into his truck bed easier, but the sheer madness of his destruction went way beyond anything normal. The smell of old wood mixed with the acrid exhaust from the idling truck seeped through the cracks. That toxic scent drifted all the way into the living room, where I stood shivering in the dark. While he was frantically hacking away at the wardrobe outside, the phone in my hand suddenly let out a dry buzz. It was a notification for a new message on the Marketplace app. David's account messaged me. "I'm so sorry, I got a flat tire on the highway. It will probably take me another hour to get there. Please hold the wardrobe for me." My mind instantly went completely blank. Cold sweat broke out all down my spine. The man holding the axe on my porch was not David. He was a total stranger, and he was dangerous. Right then, the hacking sounds outside abruptly stopped. A dead silence suffocated the entire space. I looked out and saw that the man had completely smashed the wooden wardrobe to pieces. He slowly snapped his head around. He fixed his crazed eyes directly on the window where I was hiding behind the curtain. I panicked, backed away, and rushed upstairs to hide in my bedroom. I locked the door, my hands shaking violently as I dialed 911. But out in the suburbs on a foggy night, there was absolutely no cell service. Moments later, I heard heavy, muddy footsteps dragging from the backyard. The chilling, prolonged screech of the back door echoed through the house. He had pushed past my broken latch and easily stepped inside. He began pacing around the living room downstairs. The scraping sound of the axe blade dragging across the hardwood floor was pure torture. That terrifying noise moved from the kitchen over to the TV room. Then, his raspy voice muttered to himself from the very bottom of the stairs. "Where are you hiding, buddy? Free stuff should be hand-delivered, right?" He started climbing the stairs, one step at a time. The old wood creaked heavily under his weight. The threat was coming straight for my bedroom door. In the midst of this absolute nightmare, I noticed a horrifying detail through the crack under the door. The hallway light caught his shadow, and the scraps of paper stuck to his filthy shoes. Those were pieces of old bills with my name and address on them, which I had thrown in the recycling bin last week. He didn't just happen to show up because of the wardrobe post tonight. That listing accidentally became a reverse trap, letting him know for sure that I was home alone. He knew I would leave the porch light on, and my guard down so he could easily make his move. This creep had been silently stalking my house for days. He went through my trash, learned my routine, and waited for the perfect moment to break in. The man was standing right outside my bedroom door. I heard the heavy swing of the axe cutting through the air, about to slam straight into the thin wooden door. Right at that exact life-or-death moment, police sirens suddenly blared violently in the distance. The sound echoed through the window panes, shattering the suffocating silence inside the house. It turned out a neighbor living a block away had called the police 10 minutes prior. They had woken up to the constant sound of splintering wood and the loud, rumbling truck engine in the dead of night. The man froze in the hallway for a second. He muttered a filthy curse in his raspy voice. Then he spun around, rushed downstairs, and fled through the back door before the police could arrive to lock down the area. A squad of armed police officers stormed the house just minutes later. They found my wooden wardrobe hacked into tiny splinters, scattered all over the front porch. In the backyard, they discovered a backpack the guy had left behind during his escape. Inside that backpack, it was filled with rope, duct tape, and several large, razor-sharp hunting knives. The police quickly inspected the old pickup truck left in the yard. They discovered it was a stolen vehicle from another state. The predator had quickly vanished into the thick fog that night and was never caught. My sense of safety was completely shattered after that fateful night. I practically gave away that suburban house, selling it off within the next week. I moved into a high-rise apartment with 24/7 tight security right in the middle of the city. I also swore to myself that I would never post anything for free online again. But that horrifying trauma has never truly left my mind. Every time I hear a truck engine revving out on the street at night, my entire body freezes up. Even the sound of someone casually chopping food in the kitchen makes me break into a cold sweat. To this day, I still ask myself one haunting question. If my neighbor hadn't happened to wake up from the noise in the yard that night, would the thing he hacked to pieces with that axe be the wooden wardrobe, or would it be my own flesh and bone? I used to worship silence. To me, absolute solitude was the ideal environment to think and work. But now, my life has been completely turned upside down. I never dare to turn off the TV in my apartment. I always keep my white noise machines blasting at maximum volume. I no longer have the courage to be alone in any enclosed space. What turned a resilient Boston graduate student of theology and psychology into someone who panics at absolute silence? I won't explain the exact event that happened that night just yet. I only want to talk about the heavy psychological aftermath I am enduring. It is a paralyzing fear that grips me the exact second the ambient sound disappears. Before the incident, my life was highly stable and completely under my control. I was pursuing a research project on the endurance limits of the human brain in anechoic environments. My daily workspace was an anechoic chamber. It was located deep under the B3 basement level of an old medical university in Boston. I always viewed that room as a sanctuary of safety and focus. It was lined with thousands of acoustic foam wedges designed to deaden 99.99% of sound waves. I had a habit of working late completely alone in that space. It was a secluded, solitary routine, entirely under my control. The normalcy and predictability of these habits made me feel incredibly secure. I had no idea that this very safe space was setting the stage for a deeply disturbing intrusion. It all started on the third night I stayed alone in the anechoic chamber under the B3 basement. That was when I had just turned off all the lights to begin the 2-hour endurance test. The space plunged into thick darkness and absolute silence. After about 30 minutes of sitting still, I heard a very faint, strange sound. It sounded like a fluid softly squishing, or more precisely, the sound of saliva moving in a wet throat. I immediately froze in place. I held my breath, intentionally swallowing hard to check myself. I wanted to determine if that sound was coming from my own body. But no, that wet noise echoed once more right after that. It was completely independent and detached from my body. This signal was very vague and quiet at first. In a normal research context, it would be very easy to overlook. I thought it was just an auditory trick caused by sheer exhaustion. But then, that wet noise kept repeating. Every 10 minutes, its frequency gradually increased. This regular repetition began to completely shatter my concentration. I tried to cling to logical medical knowledge to reassure myself. I told myself that auditory hallucinations are extremely common in soundproof environments. When human ears are in an anechoic chamber for too long, the brain automatically amplifies the sound of blood rushing through veins or the heartbeat. I believed in that scientific hypothesis and decided not to leave the room. I kept my head down and continued logging the research data into my notebook. This procrastination and complacency inadvertently allowed the threat to silently develop. It was quietly surrounding the entire space around me without my knowledge. The clock read almost 2 in the morning. This is the time when the human psyche is most vulnerable. The strange noise suddenly changed its nature. It was no longer a vague thumping sound. It had turned into a prolonged, incredibly wet sliding sound. I could clearly locate the direction of the noise. It was coming from the southeast corner of the room. At the same time, a faint wave of warm, humid air spread through the space. The shift in air pressure within the room made my goosebumps stand on end. I realized that my ear's natural auditory amplification could not do this. It could not spontaneously create such a sudden temperature change. And it certainly could not produce the pungent, foul stench of gastric juices now hitting my nose. Fear began to overpower my reason. But instead of leaving the room immediately, I made a terrible mistake. I wanted to check it myself to end this obsession. I switched on my phone's flashlight. The weak beam cut through the thick darkness toward the corner. I stepped closer to the source of the noise. I told myself I just needed to touch the acoustic foam wedges in that corner. I needed to prove this was just a physical vibration from the building's ventilation system. I took each step with extreme caution. I reached out and pressed my fingers against the surface of the corner wall. The cold texture of the industrial foam was completely gone. It was no longer dry. Instead, it felt unnaturally slick and warm. The wall's surface expanded and contracted, elastic like the living flesh of a creature. That single touch officially locked me into a state of absolute terror. The flashlight beam from my phone shone directly into the corner, revealing a horrifying truth. The acoustic foam wedges had completely melted, oozing a pale yellow fluid. All four surrounding walls began contracting and expanding in a steady, rhythmic pulse. The space inside the soundproof room was visibly shrinking. In a blind panic, I rushed toward the heavy steel emergency exit. I found the entire handle and the seams of the door completely sealed by a thick, hot layer of flesh. I pounded my fists frantically against the steel door in utter futility. "Is anyone out there? Please help me." The contractions of the surrounding flesh suddenly shifted in frequency. The pulse of the room began to accelerate, synchronizing perfectly with my own chaotic heartbeat. From the ceiling above, a large slit tore open like a gaping throat. It emitted a low, sickening groan. The sound perfectly mimicked my own voice, calling out my name. Julie. The horrific truth was officially exposed. This room was not a man-made structure. It was the stomach of an ancient creature nesting deep beneath Boston, and it knew exactly who I was. In a state of sheer desperation, I spotted an old fire axe in the corner of the room. It was a leftover tool from a previous renovation project. I lunged forward, grabbed the axe, and used every ounce of my strength to hack frantically at the layer of flesh blocking the door. "Die. Let me go." Every strike of the axe caused the acidic fluid inside to splatter everywhere. The corrosive liquid splashed onto my arms, creating a terrifying burning sensation. But I didn't stop because my fear at that moment completely overpowered the physical pain. The thick layer of flesh was finally ripped wide open. The heavy steel door swung open. I used the last remnants of my strength to crawl out into the B3 basement hallway. My vision blurred, and I passed out right there on the cold floor. University campus security found me a few hours later. I woke up in the hospital with chemical burns and a completely shattered psyche. However, the truth about that room was entirely twisted by the university administration. They immediately ordered the permanent sealing of the entire B3 basement level. The public reason they gave was the discovery of a severe asbestos leak. It was nothing but a lie to cover up a horrific secret beneath the ground of Boston. This meant that the ancient entity had not been destroyed at all. It was still nestled deep in the dark, continuing to contract, waiting for its next prey. The horrific event of that night left me with a severe psychological scar. I immediately canceled the research project, left Boston, and moved into a bustling apartment in Chicago. I had to seek out the noise of the city to escape the silence. I developed a dark hypothesis of my own. The deep basements and labyrinthine subway systems of major cities are actually piercing right through the bodies of colossal organisms. They are deformed entities that have been sleeping underground for thousands of years. And sometimes, a few solitary people like me accidentally step straight into their stomachs without ever knowing it. Late every night, the floor of my apartment shakes violently as a subway train passes underneath. In the pitch darkness, I can smell the pungent stench of gastric juices wafting through the air, and from the dark void right beneath my bed, I hear that spine-chilling whisper once again in my exact same voice.